After removing the protective packaging from the waste removal machine, follow these steps. Step 1. Open the lower rear door of the machine and cut off the white Y-zip tie used for fixing. Step 2. Open the side door of the machine and balance it horizontally using a test platform, adjusting it in all directions. Step 3. Once the balance is achieved, start the wiring work. The skin tubes sent with the machine are placed here. Start by pulling out the cord long oil tube, straighten it out, and thread it through the side hole. All 4 skin tubes should be threaded through this hole. Step 4. Connect each skin tube to its corresponding interface. Each tube and interface have matching labels, such as C to C. Lightly press the head of the tube, align it with the interface, and push it all the way in for a secure connection. Pay attention not to connect them incorrectly. Step 5. After connecting the oil tubes, start connecting the power supply for the oil pump. There are 2 power lines. Thread them through the same hole into the waste removal machine. The blue aviation plug on the black tube should be connected to the left side interface of the machine. Make sure the plug and interface match in their numbered labels, and secure the connection by rotating the plug. Step 6. Thread the other power line of the oil pump from the hole to the left side of the machine. Open the left side door, pour out the power cable that has been threaded through, and bring it out from this hole. Each U-shaped connector is marked with a letter that corresponds to the appropriate cable. Tighten the screws one by one. The voltage should be 380 volts. The needle-shaped connector is used for the grounding wire. Insert it into the hole in the upper part with a thin object. Insert the needle-shaped connector into the lower hole. Step 7. Route the power cable from the ground on the floor through the machine's lower part, passing through the hole, and then connect the grounding wire one by one, tightening the screws. Now that we have connected the oil tubes and achieved proper balance, plug in the power. Open the air box, take out the air hose from the inside, and connect it to the machine. Connect the hose's head to the designated position inside the air box. Once all connections have been made, close the door. Press the green button in the middle to start the oil pump. Go to the back of the oil cylinder and check the fan and motor. If both machines blow the air outward in the direction of the arrow, it indicates that they are installed correctly. For safety purposes, it is crucial to first turn off the power switch before handling the machine template. This step is of utmost importance. Pull out the upper plate. Use an 8mm screwdriver to remove the fixing pins that secure it. This is to prevent any potential damage to the upper plate during transportation. After removing the fixing pins from all 4 corners, push the upper plate back in and close it securely. Click on the Home button, then click on Manual page in sequence. The hydraulic jog changes from a prohibited state to allowed. Pressing the downward arrow indicates the platform where the machine is launched. Hold down the downward arrow and the template will smoothly slide out. Once it is pushed to approximately this position, you can stop. Click on Run Interface, where the initial text return to 0 is displayed. We need to press the reset button once, and it will change to the number 0. Then press and hold the reset button again for about 3 seconds, while the screen value is continuously changing. The position of the template is also searching for the origin. Finally, the value returns to the word return to 0, and the template is reset to the origin, which is automatically pushed out. Align the upper mode and lower mode by positioning them accurately. Find cylindrical locating pins used for 4-point positioning and insert them one by one into the holes at the 4 corners of the lower mode. Ensure that the heads of the cylindrical pins do not exceed the protruding position. Otherwise, there may be a collision when advancing the lower mode. Click on the Manual page, set the hydraulic state to allow, and click the up arrow to advance the lower mode. Then open the side door of the machine and lift the inserted cylindrical pins upward. Normally, the pins should easily pass through the corresponding holes in the upper mode. Pull all 4 cylindrical pins upward, and if they can all pass through, it indicates that the upper and lower modes are accurately aligned. After the inspection, retract the cylindrical pins downward. If there is a deviation between the holes in the upper mode and the cylindrical pins, preventing them from passing through, Observe whether there is a front-to-back shift or a left-to-right shift between the two. Solution for front and back deviation. Click on the system parameters on the screen. Enter the password 124578. Click Next. The machine platform will move its position based on the input positive or negative values. The larger the negative value, the further the machine platform moves outward, and the larger the positive value, the closer the machine platform moves towards the positive direction, which is the direction where the operator is located. Let's take -10 as an example. Enter -18 and then click the blue button below. The machine platform will move outward accordingly. Press the reset button. Lower plate is smoothly pushed out and click on the manual page. Set the hydraulic jog state to allow and select the advanced positioning option. Finally, test whether the cylindrical pins can pass smoothly through the holes in the upper mold. If they can all pass through, it indicates that the issue has been resolved. Solution for left-right shift. To address the left-right shift, loosen the screws on both sides. There are a total of 8 screws, with 4 on each side. After loosening all the screws, the upper mold can be moved left and right to insert the 4 cylindrical pins into the corresponding holes. Once aligned, tighten the nuts by hand, gently touching the inner surface. Then, use an L-shaped hex key and a hex wrench to securely tighten the nuts. After tightening all the nuts, do not forget to retract the cylindrical pins downward. Note that when there is no left-right offset in the template, you should not randomly twist the 8 screws. Go back to the front of the machine and press the reset button to retract the lower template. Remove all 4 cylindrical pins. Then, simply flip down the orange light and shadow sensor on both sides of the machine platform. Start the oil pump and click on the board replacement operation on the screen. Select Start Upper Template Replacement and the upper template will loosen and move downward. Once again, it is important to emphasize that before replacing the machine template, the oil pump start button must be turned off to ensure that the machine template is in a non-operational state. Next, use your thumb to lift the locks on both sides and open the small door. Release the middle rotating knob and place the vertical baffle horizontally. Tighten the rotating knob and slowly pull the upper board all the way down. Place a sheet of product paper with the bite facing inward and the ruler on the side. Then measure the center position of the paper. If the paper has centering marks on its 4 sides, it will be more convenient. If not, use a ruler to measure the distance between the 4 edges of the paper and the upper board. The values should be the same for top and bottom, left and right, to ensure that the paper is in the center position. Use several pins for frame positioning. If the paper slightly obstructs the holes, make minor adjustments to its position. Use 2 pins on the top edge to balance the paper and 1 pin on the side to determine its left and right position. Then, sequentially push the edges of the paper against the 3 pins to secure them tightly. After arranging one side, proceed with the frame positioning for the other 2 sides. If most of the holes are covered, inserting the pins further back would create a larger distance between the pins and the paper. In that case, you can insert the pins below the edge of the paper. Finally, mark these 5 pins with a pen to indicate that no other pins should exceed this range. For product positioning, use a pointed short needle to pierce the hole and then use a thicker needle to enlarge the hole so that the pointed short needle can be inserted. All products need to be securely positioned to ensure precise and immovable placement for each one. There are 3 engraved lines on each side of the upper board, which are used to assist in measuring the distance from the waste paper edge to the engraved lines. Take out a steel ruler, and to ensure accurate measurements, do not use the head of the steel ruler. Instead, align the engraved lines on the steel ruler with the center line of the upper template and record the measured values on the product. The same method applies to the other end. If the measured values are the same, it indicates that the paper placement is balanced. Next, the measurement of the ruler position is also marked with 3 engraved lines. Align the engraved lines on the steel ruler with the center line. Make precise measurements, and record the measured values on the product to avoid forgetting. These 2 values 27 and 60 will be used for adjusting the position of the lower template later. Once the margin measurement is complete, it's time to separate the product from the waste edges. The holes in the middle of the product can be removed using a pointed short needle, and clean out all the holes one by one. The pins on the upper template come in 2 sizes, 5 mm and 3 mm. When the spacing between products is small, using the 5 mm pins may damage the product. so the 3mm pins should be used for positioning. The thicker 5mm pins are used for overall layout and should be inserted along the edges of the product, avoiding direct contact with the product if possible. The number of pins is not specified. The key is to ensure even distribution of force on the upper board. The pins must not exceed the outer frame positioning pins marked earlier. Ensure that the pins are within the marked pin range. The pins inside the airplane hose should also not touch the product. The pin operations on the upper template are specifically for the waist edges. After completing the pinning process, use a tool with a magnet to remove all the marked pins. Once the removal of the marked pins is complete, double-check for any damage to the product caused by the pins, whether all the airplane holes have pins, and if all the marked pins have been removed. After confirming everything is in order, grasp the handle with both hands and push the upper template forward. Release the circular rotating knob to lower the baffle, and then tighten it. Close the small doors on both sides and ensure they lock securely. Press the oil pump start button and click Finish Upper Template Replacement on the screen. The upper template will retract. Next, we will proceed with the pinning of the lower template. Click on Lower Plate Changing and you will observe the inner circular hole steel plate mesh of the lower plate rising up. Similar to the upper template, the lower template also has 3 engraved lines. The value measured between the bite of the upper template and the third engraved line was 27. The distance between the third engraved line on the lower template and the edge where the ruler is positioned should also be accurately measured to 27. If the ruler position needs to be adjusted, simply loosen the screw slightly and move the ruler until the edge aligns with the engraved line. Once the position is adjusted, tighten the screw again, but do not fully tighten it. This is because the position of the ruler's other end needs to be edges. Align the scale on the steel ruler with the third engraved line. Then use your hand to tighten the screw and secure the ruler position. Finally, use an Allen wrench to give it a second tightening. The side ruler should also be adjusted based on these 3 engraved lines. Loosen the screw and use a steel ruler to measure the distance between the third line and the edge of the ruler. If the ruler position is still too far off, you can remove the 2 screws and reposition the ruler. Tighten the screws again and then perform an accurate position measurement. The distance measured from the upper template per ruler edge was 60, and the distance here should also be 60. Don't forget to measure the other end of the ruler. Once measured, hold the ruler firmly with one hand and do not move its position. Use the other hand to tighten the screw and secure it with the wrench once again. Place the prepared product paper on the lower template. Make sure the paper is not reversed and the bite is facing inward, with the ruler on the side. With the accurate measurement and adjustment of the ruler position, the 2 edges of the paper will fit perfectly, with no gaps. The focus of the lower template is on the waste paper section. We will use black plastic magnets to position it. Place several magnets to secure the paper more firmly. If the product has airplane holes, use magnets to hold them in place as well. Then, peel off the product section and proceed with pinning in this area. The pins on the lower template are also available in 2 sizes, thick and thin. Thin pins are generally used for holes partially blocked by the paper, to minimize damage to the paper. However, if the fit is too tight, it is recommended to use thick pins for complete holes, keeping some distance between the pins and the paper. For small and protruding parts like these, only thin pins can be used to fill the gap. For other areas, continue using thick pins to position along the edges. The insertion pin work for the lower die is completed. These vacant parts are aircraft holes, and this is what it looks like after the pins are removed. Press the oil pump start button, click Finish Lower Template Replacement, and the inner circular hole steel plate mesh of the lower template, along with the pins, will descend. Remove all 6 black plastic magnets, clean up any debris, and prepare a small amount of paper for initial testing. Place the paper correctly, with the bite facing inward and the edges of the paper aligned with the ruler. On the screen, click Manual Page and then change the hydraulic jogging status from Prohibited to Allowed. Next, click Advance Lower Template, and the lower template will be pushed forward. There are several sets of buttons at the bottom of the machine. Long press the lower or cylinder down button to ensure that the upper board pins are fully extended. Then, Gently press the adjacent upper or cylinder up button multiple times, ensuring careful and slow operation. Observe closely to see if there is any collision when the upper and lower pins intersect. If the product and waste paper separate properly, hold down the upper or cylinder up button to retract the upper board pins. Click the Eject Lower Template button on the screen to slide out the lower template. Then, turn off the oil pump start button. Check if the product has been damaged. If the product is intact, it indicates that the pin positioning is very accurate. If the product edges are damaged like this, it indicates a deviation in the pins of the upper template, which needs to be adjusted immediately. Press the Reset button to retract the pins. Start the oil pump. Perform the board replacement operation by clicking Turn off the oil pump. Pull out the upper template. Carefully match the damaged areas. Locate the pins in the upper template that caused the product damage, and depending on the situation, either reinsert them or directly remove them while keeping them away from the product edges. After resolving the issue, advance the upper template, activate the hydraulic cylinder, and click to complete the upper template. Another situation is that the overall position of the paper is significantly deviated, and the position of the bevel can be adjusted appropriately. After solving the pin insertion issue, clean the product. If the lower mold pin does not retract automatically, press the Reset button to reset the pin. Clean up all the garbage on the platform and ensure that there are no issues before proceeding to formal production. The maximum stack height of paper in formal production is 8 cm. The paper stack must be tightly stacked against the ruler and placed neatly. Hold down both switches with both hands to automatically advance the platform for waste removal. The orange lights on both sides of the machine platform are flipped over. When the product height is high enough, the lights on both sides detect that the product has been taken out, and the pins will automatically retract. If the product thickness is relatively thin and the light and shadow cannot sense the pins, they will not retract. In this case, press the Reset button once, and the pins will retract automatically. If you encounter situations such as the paper not being neatly placed, the paper not being centered on the platform, or the bite not being properly aligned during the normal startup of the product, it is possible for our overlay to get stuck in the middle of the pins and not drop down. To solve this problem, first retract the lower template, then click the Change Overlay button on the screen, and pull out the upper template. The overlay is now in a tilted position. Do not tap it or perform any other actions. Instead, have two people, one on each side, balance the overlay and let it drop down. Finally, push back the upper template to resolve the issue. When the machine starts to operate, check if there are any other objects, such as paper, dropped into the rear cabinet. They must be cleared to keep the rear cabinet clean and tidy. The machine also needs to be regularly greased with a grease gun on the foot of each column in the corners of the upper plate every half month for maintenance. The larger columns should also be greased a little. Don't forget the lower guide rail and other places of the machine.